First of all, good evening. I would like to welcome everyone here, and special thanks to the of this conference. So the title of my speech is the Osteobiography of Individuals, as we already know, and this paper is aimed to show the capability of extending research possibilities, thereby developing new heuristic potentially understood conceptual framework of osteobiographical studies. This approach empowers somehow to meet many individual biographies instead of recognizing it within the social groups, as archaeologists often do. We already know about this. It might lead to the individualization or identification of specific human being that enables the synthesis of information, the better recognition of the relationships between individual agents, let's say, and understanding the nature of individual life over the life cycle. It also attempts to contribute to the significant discussion about developing a new theoretical dialogue. So beginning with this, biography in the etymological sense, bio, life, and graphos means to write. On the other hand, the word osteo refers to human remains. So osteobiography is a narration written in bones. This concept extracting life stories from bones and its interpreted descriptions of bone measurements. It is a, let's say, departure from the traditional statistical approach to biography modeled on biomedical research. It allows for the formalized form of illustrating a typical life story and for understanding that population studies will not capture. The osteobiographical approach includes analytical directions that aim to examine complex data by integrating the results of osteological analysis and cultural evidence. It also integrates philosophical directions, relational ontology of objects and their agency. Finally, it covers conceptual directions relating to human life within the life in the biosocial environment. So osteobiography is a concept that's become popular in recent years, but it's still poorly, let's say, theoretical, and there is no systematic methodological research. In its present use, it remains somehow as originally formulated by Sau in 1972 for him or for them. Osteobiography includes all the information available from a skeleton in order to create a life story. This definition is certainly a stimulating starting point, but does not fully capture the potential. This concept has not matured, let's say, in the generation in which we exist. You might ask why, right? This is due to its strong status in biomedical paradigm in which bioarchaeology grew, which can be traced thanks to its twin roots in biological anthropology and socially oriented processual archaeology. The beginnings of this approach to human remains are directly linked with the research on the individual and also populational level. The intention was to show the relationship between past people and ecology and cultural history, and to show how the individual and also social group existed in the past. In the scientific community discourse, there is also biological and humanistic approach to human remains. Considering modern science, it seems reasonable to say that the biological and humanistic approach developed in accordance with the formation of, for example, separate scientific fields with their research methods or from research centers oriented in the different parts of the world. The biological, so it's called, let's say, analytical, mathematical, numerical approach to human remains involves research in fields such as anthropology, biological anthropology, paleontology, and humanistic, so descriptive, narrative, includes archaeology, ethnology, cultural anthropology. Regarding the presented perspective, it should be stated that the, let's say, authors, which you show on the slide, tried to study the biography of people in various ways. The first was to combine different sciences and types of information from the body, distinguish purely biological analysis, including also anthropological and archaeological data. And the second way of writing about it was related to the choice of number of remains to be analyzed. The goal was to create potential image, let's say, of the entire social group or population. So to sum up, it is possible to distinguish here an anthropological, humanistic, and at the same time populational and individual approach to osteobiography. It is also worth noting that there are a few studies analyzing the bone remains of individuals in relation to the entire life cycle of an individual. Bioarchaeologists usually focus on studying one fragment, for example, initiation, ritual, death, while the life cycle is often analyzed by archaeologists dealing with the analysis of iconographic data, because it is often the only one source that allows for go through individual stages of existence. And this is what also Professor Joy publication. So presented approach make it possible to get to know many individual past biographies instead of studying the past within social groups, as archaeologists once again often do when describing cultural groups in general. In archaeology, biography is understood as a complex life of people or objects. And I need to mention that artifacts matter more often than people. So this concept is sometimes seen as a metaphor for the purpose of understanding the relationship between people and things. Used as a metaphor can also be seen in the study about, for example, house constructions in order to trace relationship of the life cycle of particular household. Using it in a sense of metaphor, biography is then a very handy tool that greatly supports the idea of narration in archaeology. Lynn Meskel, for example, emphasized that an individual's biography and life cycle are social constructs. They result from interpersonal relationships. This is the result of the fact that the object seeks implementation, fulfillment throughout the relationship with other entities. The concept of life cycle is fundamental because it assumes that temporal actions that leave traces and on and in bones, they are very, let's say, important, and the flow presupposes somehow some continuity of existence and therefore biography. A concept that is particularly relevant to the field that was introduced by Sabrina Agarwal. She was mentioned today from the University of California, Berkeley. She applied developmental and life cycle theory. Therefore, she combined the knowledge resulting from the analysis of the human remains with social concepts. Divagation on the role of network theory and the introduction of this concept to archaeology began with the discussion of materiality. In modern archaeology, there is a wide spectrum of solutions that discover network connections and the relational nature. Network science can be useful in, for example, examining interdependencies, mutual entanglements, and the term entanglement in the proposed I'm using in the sense defined by Ian Hodder in 2012 in 2016 as a dialectical relationship between them, people and things on each other, and dependencies between people and things because they influence each other. It's a bit like materiality and debate about things in archaeology. However, there is a noticeable difference here because it becomes possible by the sample use statistical analysis. Entanglement reduced this approach to focus on human dependence on material things. Life interacts, stimulates, and shapes its existence by creating a biography. So mutual dependencies are represented by graphical image of connections. Modeling depends on different selected variables depending on the research question. Each network of connections, social relations, can be described and visualized as a form of graph where the vertices present entities are, let's say, types of interactions. So just imagine producer-user relationship. The approach I'm presenting is a combination of various research methods obtained from different theoretical concepts. The research model applies the contextual method. It's a single context method, the method of osteological description, the method of life cycle, and the method of interdependence. Here as an example to visualize what I'm talking about, you can see the building, right? And the human remains placed under the platform. It's just an example of where I'm working, and chapel is known for everybody, so I'm just mentioning here chapel. The contextual method refers to a single context of the disease, and therefore considering the stratigraphic sequences, which is very important. So response to a question about relationship between people placed in a burial pit within the settlement and cycle, let's say cycle of individual household. The method of osteological description on the slide combines 7 osteological age categories highlighted, and I was trying to integrate them into the Sabrina Agata. This approach results from the social concept as the body is embedded in the biosocial environment and treated under the influence of the development trajectory. The life history of a certain individual is into culture, biological categories, including age and sex, which define the different stages of life. Very important feature in this case is also, it can be seen as a metaphor of life experience, and it's, let's say, the numerator in which we mark the acquired experiences. The key to understanding the method is interdependency. So dependencies that entanglement in all kinds of relationships throughout a complex network of diverse obligation and dependencies. You can see here contextual categories, including features related to human life in yellow, and blue, these are features added to the categories distinguished by Professor Hodder, and which were not described and applied by Professor in his entanglement method. And environmental and special and sociocultural feature categories. In order to select the disease whose statistics and characteristics allow for biographical analysis, computer software use, the main task was deciding which of the individuals should be further analyzed, because we have a lot of them. So links created in this becomes possible to initiate an initial interpretation. The vertices closest to each other are characterized by the greatest similarity. Some of the vertices have more connections than others. This is due to some generally possessed attributes. The strength of the network, especially noticeable on the left-hand side of the slide of this graph, it's about a network of connections between different categories of sex and age, but mainly women and children. Each vertex with a color has equivalent in the form of individual. The visualization is very informative at this stage, especially due to a clear division of individuals by age, as well as showing them on the chart inventory, which you can see right now because it was much more complicated. And the table of assigned to all individuals visible on the graph. So after determination relationships of individual features that have a greater or lesser impact on the biography of human and connect with directly, indirectly, so according to the concept, asymmetrically, The features involved in the circles, which you can see on the slide, they are related to contextual, biological, sociocultural features and are directly or indirectly connected with other, let's say, entities. All features distinguish with individual fluency human biography, and they can be related to each other as well. So here you can see first step of defining the biography, and it's a single context method, quantitative and qualitative characteristics, individual osteobiographical features in adulthood, because it's an example of so model of connection for a man who died after 50 years old, and this case is from Czerçeve. And the purpose of the second part of the approach proposal is to determine the effect of diet, activity, physical activity, mobility, and diseases on the human biography, including age at which the person died. So at the end of the second, you can see factors affecting human biography, and this model, this graph refers to a woman who has died between age 30 to 50. And the second step is rely on single context again, qualitative and quantitative method, visual features in adulthood, and factors affecting human biography. So I'm not going to show you because we don't have time, but we can focus on research potential. So to summarize, the applied method presents different approaches nature of objects, pointing to the asymmetric definition of material object as an actor. So objects, they act, they connections and relations result from the fact that they can exist in realm of material causal relations, but not in the reflective realm of social relations. Thus, this approach implies the concept of relational symmetry of dual beings that are humans and non-humans. The use of social network analysis is its visualization using graphs mainly concerned relational networks to provide research tools for data analysis. This approach uses different research perspectives, according to which the explanatory power is not in the properties of the studied entities, but above all in the relations between them. The structure of the network can, however, be created by a wide range of relations, starting from a single relations of beings and agents, objects to a relationship of human being within the social environment. I wish that I can show you the results, but maybe next time. So the life cycle that makes up a human biography can be understood as a series of events, stages that each time leave mark on a person's life. Their diagnosis, let's say, should never be limited to one stage, as Professor Joyce also mentioned this, but should consider all phases throughout which the study has gone through. Networks can never, let's say, maybe different. Networks can be used to test, say, expectations from the model, but they are also powerful as explanatory tools because they draw our attention to patterns that might not be so obvious in their analysis. And one more slide, two more. But there is still need for research into, especially developing common data collection standards to compare osteobiography of people exposed at different archaeological sites. It's a huge problem, and yeah, we need to compare with something, right? And so we need to discuss about data collection and how we can compare the results being done. And the possibility of recognizing the time of appearance of a specific residential structure within their internal layout in relation to the moment of death of a person, which will make it possible to establish a relationship between the life cycle of a person and the life cycle of residential structure. So it's ongoing, and I think Kevin Kay is doing this, and hopefully he is here. And also very interesting thing, which is also ongoing process, the post-mortem burial study, atypical, secondary, or delayed burials. And one more thing, more dynamic scale time scale that could be used in osteobiographical research. So determining the precise age, it's not possible, but maybe not that wide scale is at the time of death. And to the end, osteobiography is an essential approach within the broader emerging humanistic bioarchaeology, a tool that poses and answers all sorts of research questions. It is an experimental also, humanistic approach, but it doesn't mean that this is or this has less value that in, let's say, in the biological approach in terms of plasticity, of development within the life cycle. So after all I show you, we might ask again ourselves how the osteobiographical and quantitative approaches relate to each other. The answer is simple. I think everybody knows it. Neither of these approaches is sufficient on its own. I think osteobiography has more potential as a research tool within socially contextualized bioarchaeology. And those are my references. And thank you for your attention.